Love, Death, and Rollerskates. Written by Spadillecious, read by Dragonfruit Flambe. Chapter 5 Out of Touch. Moon knew it was inevitable that a replacement would be employed at the roller rink. Therefore, he wasn't surprised when he saw you exit Afton's office for the first time all those months ago, shaking the man's hand with a happy expression. Moon kept his head down as always, focusing on the floor in front of him he was currently mopping. You, like the last person with your job, had no idea what you had gotten yourself into. Afton closed his office door tight as he returned inside, a small, satisfied smile on his lips. Replacements were always a hassle, but this one had been quick and painless. Hopefully, your death would be the same. You turned on your heel and headed in the direction of the main entrance. Your demeanor was giddy, blissfully unaware you'd just made a deal with the devil. Moon kept cleaning the floor without sparing you a second glance. "Hello! Looks like we're going to be coworkers." You suddenly were standing in front of him, hand extended in a greeting and giving him your name. Moon looked up from the floor, scanning your hand with a skeptical frown. Why would someone try to greet a cleaning machine? "Keep your distance," he reminded himself, and walked past you wordlessly, placing his mop back into the bucket and wringing it out. This seemed to do the trick, and you withdrew your hand hesitantly. It doesn't matter. They won't be here long anyway. "Oh, sorry for bothering you." You apologized in a small voice before continuing down the hallway. At the end of it, Sun rounded the corner and approached you with his arms raised and sporting a wide grin on his faceplate. Oh, great. Of course he wasn't keeping his distance. "So, how did it go?" Sun asked, and Moon could see your face immediately light up when you spotted the sunny animatronic. You waved your hand excitedly to greet the robotic personification of sunshine. "I got it! We're going to be coworkers, Sun!" You beamed, bringing out a name tag from the pocket of your windbreaker to show him. "Thank you again for helping me get the interview." "Oh, new friend, this is going to be so much fun!" Sun gushed, not able to stop himself from picking you up and spinning. You emitted a quiet yelp as he did, freezing in his grip. Sun immediately set you down, apologizing frantically. Good. At least you had some semblance of a self-preservation instinct. Moon sarcastically thought to himself and rolled his eyes. It won't save you now, though. After congratulating you again, Sun placed his hand on your shoulder and offered to show you to your new locker. It was an offer you eagerly accepted, letting the animatronic lead you with his arm still around your shoulder. The janitor watched silently as the two of you disappeared through the hallway together. The corner of Moon's mouth twitched downward as he overheard the fading conversation. It was morbid, the way his solar counterpart had drawn another naive human into danger, like a moth to a flame, and pretended to be their friend as the rotten cherry on top. His grip on the mop tightened as he wrung out the mop in the bucket once again. Moon then secured the handle of the mop to the cleaning cart with a click, and began pushing it towards his next destination. No matter, at least he was going to keep you at arm's length. If he didn't know you, he wouldn't care when you inevitably followed in the footsteps of those before you. And he did keep his distance. For a while. The two of you never really exchanged a word. The closest you ever were to interacting was when he quietly judged the way Sun acted around you. But then that foolish solar animatronic got himself hurt on the after-hours job. Gritting his teeth, Moon recalled the memory of Sun stumbling weakly through the back door, internal coolant system failing and leaking oil all over his freshly mopped floor. And while Sun was temporarily down for the count, Moon had to take his place. As he waited behind the rentals desk for you to arrive, he leaned on the counter, resting his faceplate in his hand, propped up by the elbow. A bearing had fallen off a skate laid on the surface, and he pushed it back and forth absent-mindedly with his other hand. When the staff bot pushing the cleaning cart for the day slowly rolled past with a whirring sound, Moon shot it a nasty look. An unwelcome reminder of how replaceable he was himself. Faint sounds of music from a Walkman headset, the crinkle of a windbreaker jacket, and footsteps from the arcade alerted him of your presence, bringing him out of his thoughts. He unenthusiastically lifted his attention from the bearing to you. Oh, where's Sun? Unsurprisingly, you were taken aback to see him there when you arrived. Disappointed, even. It was twisted. The way you'd taken to Sun, unable to see the dangerous game he was playing with your life. At the mechanics, Moon explained shortly, looking out the window and fiddling with the strap of the Polaroid camera around his neck with one of his hands. He missed the cleaning cart already. What? Is he all right? You smacked your hands on the countertop and tried to establish eye contact with the lunar animatronic on the opposite side of the desk. The sudden movement made Moon flinch, and his eyes snapped in your direction. He'll be fine, Moon added in a monotone voice, corners of his mouth extending downwards, and resumed his window-watching escapism. You, on the other hand, seem to have a bad case of sunstroke. He thought sarcastically to himself. The two of you sat silently together behind the rentals desk after that. On top of everything, it was a slow day, and not many customers would be coming in. Moon busied himself with tightening bearings on the wheels, sitting as far away from you as possible within the contained space, and with his back turned towards you. So, do you like roller skating? You finally broke the silence, turning your head from where you leaned on the counter to look at him. Moon's shoulder tensed at the attention. No, he replied in a short manner, tightening the bearing so hard that the wheel broke off the skate completely. It was quiet between the two of you as the loosened wheel rolled off the counter with a dull sound. You followed it with your eyes quietly before turning back your head towards him. I see. So, what do you like, Moon? You prodded, moving closer and taking a seat on the counter next to him. The janitor tensed as you approached. Why were you so curious? A terrible quality to possess in the precarious situation you didn't yet know you were in. Curiosity killed the cat, Moon prophesized internally. Of all the Party Planet employees that had come and gone, you certainly were the most inquiring when it came to him. His unpleasant manners had deterred your precursors, but not you. Oh, come on! I've worked here for months, and I still don't know anything about you. You sighed. I didn't even know your name until I asked Sun about it. You trailed off, obviously worrying about your absent friend. Sunstroke, Moon reiterated mentally and rolled his eyes. Because it's none of your business, Moon said with an air of finality, getting up to throw the now broken skate in the garbage can. You watched him with your lips pressed together in a slanted line as the skate was disposed of with a thunk. Jumping off the counter, you left the rentals desk, grabbing your roller skates by their laces. No use trying to have a conversation with someone obviously wanting to be left alone. After a quick trip to the DJ booth to change the music for the still empty roller rink, you sat down in one of the entrances of the rink, tying the laces tight with an uneven ribbon. You shakily stood up on the skates. Out of Touch by Daryl Hall and John Oates started on the speakers as you walked along the edge of the rink, still holding on tightly to the boards. Moon watched you silently from behind a magazine he'd found, feet propped up on the counter of the rentals desk. You hoped Sun was all right and that he would be back soon. You weren't sure you could spend another day working with Moon, with the way he obviously disliked you. At least Moon said Sun was going to be fine, and when he was back, you would definitely impress him with some new roller skating skills. Letting go of the boards, you took a confident step forward, but you put too much force into it and the skate disappeared from underneath you, sending you tumbling onto your face. Luckily, you managed to brace the fall with your hands. A raspy, half-suppressed laugh from the rentals counter surprised you, however. Moon chuckled behind his magazine, raising it to cover his faceplate. "I'd like to see you do better, Mr. I Hate Roller Skates," you challenged with a deadpan expression from where you laid on the floor. Moon lowered his magazine and put it on the counter, faceplate displaying a sly grin. Well, that was certainly a first for Moon, in your experience. He did not make any movements indicating he was accepting the challenge, though, remaining in his seat. "That's what I thought." As you managed to get on your feet, you smiled cockily in his direction. "I'm not the worst roller skater working at Party Planet, then." Moon merely returned to his magazine again, trying his hardest to force his attention back to the page and away from the aggravating human taunting him from the rink. "Keep your distance. Keep your distance. Keep your distance." "Too scared, Moon?" you teased as you slowly skated out on the floor again. "Bet you can't even use the toe stops like this," you joked, trying to get into a position standing on your toe stops like Sun had taught you, but tilted the stop too far and toppled over. As you fell, a flash of light emitted from the rentals desk. "Did you just take a picture of me falling?" you asked with a squeak as you landed on the floor again, a blush dusting your cheeks. Moon lowered the Polaroid camera in his hand as a picture printed from it, confirming your guess. He grabbed the picture, grin widening as the image began to develop on the film. You threw your skates off and ran up to the desk to see what he had captured. As you arrived, Moon popped the cap off his marker and scribbled something underneath the photograph. Looking up from the still not completely developed photo, Moon slid the image in your direction with a satisfied grin. You puckered your lips as you lifted it from the counter to read the caption. "Party Planet's worst skater? But you didn't even prove you can skate." You raised an eyebrow and waved the image in front of him after reading the insult. "How dare he?" Moon grabbed your wrist lightly, yet determined, stopping your waving movements. His metallic fingers were cold, the chill finding its way through both your jacket and dress shirt as he stared you down. "You shouldn't shake a Polaroid picture. It can mess up the result." He scolded you quietly before slowly releasing your arm. He then reached for the magazine again, flipping it back to the page he was on. "Photography," you said, looking at the image again. Your smile widened impishly as you looked back at the robot. "You like photography." Moon's eyes widened hearing your conclusion, the magazine dropping from his hands and gently sailing down onto the floor with a rustling sound. He'd let something crucial slip. White halo pupils in the sea of red focused on you. For a second, his hands shook slightly, and he looked at you as though you'd just threatened him, until his hands clenched and he reverted back to his regular sour frown. "Do you take other pictures? Could you show me?" you asked excitedly, smiling ear to ear at the robot. Just then, a chime rang out from the entrance, letting you know the first customers of the day had arrived. "You just don't give up, do you?" Moon sighed, getting out of his chair to put away the magazine lying in a mess on the floor. "Go get your roller skates you left on the rink and do your job." When a handful of customers had been served, the two of you once again sat together quietly behind the rentals desk. "So, Photography, huh? You eyed the janitor with a smirk. He'd once again donned his shield of celebrity gossip, obviously pretending to page through the articles, speculating about the bride's dress for the upcoming royal wedding. Moon gave no indication that he'd heard you, but you knew his audio receptors were sharper than that. His Polaroid camera was set on the counter in front of him, right by the photograph smearing your good name as a roller skater. A plan for revenge formed in your head, and your hands snaked to grasp the gadget as Moon turned another page. Smile! Just as he noticed what you were up to, and he lowered the magazine from his faceplate, you put your plan in action. Moon flinched from the bright flash, bringing up a hand to shield his eyes. "What do you think you're—" he began, but was interrupted by the sound of a cap being popped off a marker as you scribbled something underneath the photograph. His eyes narrowed as your smile grew, and you put the lid back on the pen. You then looked him dead in the eyes as you raised the Polaroid image in the air and began to shake it violently. It made a faint, wobbly sound before Moon snatched it out of your hands and inspected the resulting image. He did not seem impressed when he read the caption. "You're a menace," the janitor remarked, putting both photographs out of your reach on the counter and putting the camera strap over his head. "It seems you have lost your photography privileges. Shaking a Polaroid can completely ruin the chemical makeup," he continued, clenching his fists. "Polaroids are made up of layers of chemicals, and shaking them like that can cause them to mix in an unintended way. It creates flaws, bubbles, artifacts, strange colors." You listened quietly, nodding and humming where it seemed appropriate. Mid-sentence, he stopped, eyebrows raising and his eyes widening as he caught himself rambling. Moon scooted his chair further away and dragged the visor of his cap downward slightly. A faint whir escaped from his inner workings as he gritted his teeth. "It's okay to like things, you know." You chuckled, taking up your Walkman and placing it on the counter in between the two of you. "I like things too. Music, for example." Moon's hand, nesting itself in the fabric of his cap, relaxed slightly, dropping to rest at his side as he averted his eyes. He briefly stared at the ceiling before sighing loudly and then turned to face you. "I've got a mixtape of my favorite songs I always carry with me. Do you want to give it a try?" You took off the headset, hanging around your neck, and held it out towards him. Moon's hands hovered around the ear cups for a couple seconds before he accepted it and put the headset on. You really gotta think about the experience as a whole when you plan the order of the songs. Oh, and don't get me started on the transitions between tracks. You explained, showing him the custom cover art for your favorite morning cassette, listing all the tracks on it. Moon nodded as you spoke, listening to the carefully curated experience you had put together. He was only about 2 songs in, but it was way further than you had expected him to put up with this. "Photography is the same, I think." Moon pondered as he lifted the headset off and hung it around his neck. "It's about capturing the experience, to immortalize it." "Don't robots have perfect memory? Aren't you always saving everything?" You asked, turning your head in his direction from where you were resting your head on your arms, folded in front of you on the counter. "Sometimes a physical photograph is harder to delete than a file." Moon gazed out the window again, something sad ghosting over his faceplate for a second. Your eyebrows furrowed in confusion. Wasn't a file also a physical thing? Wouldn't that be harder to destroy than a little picture that could be ripped by the strength of a hand alone? You didn't comment on it, though, as the subject seemed to upset him. The day went by faster than you had expected, and soon merely an hour remained until closing. Only a small group of guests were left at the roller rink. When 2 of them walked by, giggling, you noticed the photo of you falling on your roller skates hung up on display at the front of the rentals desk. "Funny," you deadpanned at the robot, who, once again, was enjoying his magazine, as you took the picture down. Though by now you had learned it wasn't the text in the magazine that had captured his interest. Rather than explaining himself, the janitor grinned mischievously in response. He was still wearing your Walkman, now listening to the evening cassette, but heard you loud and clear nonetheless. Sighing, you went to put a pair of skates back. However, a dark stain on them caught your eye as you placed them on the shelf. It had been a good while since you and Son had given the skates in stock a good scrub, and you supposed a slow day like this was as good as time as any. Mr. Afton was particular about keeping the place spotless, after all, roller skates included. Do you want to help me clean some roller skates? Lifting the right ear cup of the headset, you smiled up at Moon. It was dreary work to go through the large inventory of skates, and you really didn't want to do it alone. I don't doubt you could use the help of a professional. Moon quipped and lowered the headset, but as you moved to take the Walkman back, he lightly smacked your hand away. The irony of how it had taken a good amount of convincing to get him to put it on earlier didn't escape you. The two of you headed to the janitor's closet in the arcade, and Moon navigated the space with obvious familiarity. Before you'd even taken in the surroundings, he was lifting down buckets from a top shelf and beginning to fill them with hot water from a tap in the room. You'd never been in there before, and you were hit with the realization that it was a lot bigger than you'd expected. High shelves lined the walls, well stocked with all kinds of cleaning products and chemicals, and further in there was a tap and a washing machine. Did a roller rink need all this stuff? You took down one of the many big bottles labeled sodium hydroxide and tried to decipher what it was used for by reading the label. Before you could, Moon lifted it out of your hands and placed it back on the shelf. We're not going to need that, he assured you, instead lifting down a white and green bottle of soap from another shelf. Moon then crouched in front of the tap, pouring the green soapy mixture into the water as he waited for the bucket to fill up. Above the tap, a single wooden shelf was mounted to the wall, holding old trophies of different shapes and sizes, and an orange bowling ball. You stared at them for a moment, squinting to try and read the inscriptions, but the shelf was too high up and at an obscuring angle from where you stood. I had a lot of fun today, Moon. Maybe you could work the rental's desk with me and Son again sometime, you asked with a smile, watching him switch the filled bucket out for an empty one, and leaned your shoulder against the wall. You didn't notice the way the shelf shook slightly above you as you did, the old screws threatening to give. The bowling ball began rolling quietly. I don't know. Moon looked up at you from where he was crouched, smiling uncertainly. Hearing the noise above, he turned his faceplate upwards quickly, but it was too late. The bowling ball tipped from the shelf, landing right at the top of his faceplate with a heavy thud. The janitor lost his balance from the impact and fell backwards into the corner post of a standing shelf. Moon! You yelled in horror, quickly rushing over. The animatronic's left eye was glitching, sharp artifacts dancing across it in intense tones of neon. His hat had also fallen off, revealing a nasty indentation from the bump at the top of the faceplate. Are you okay? Oh, please, please, please be okay. You tried desperately, kneeling beside him and holding his faceplate close to your own face to inspect the damage. You traced the indentation with your hand shakily. His faceplate felt warm. Too warm. The pupil in his other eye was missing. No, I'm so sorry, Moon. Hold on, I'll call the mechanic, you assured him as you scrambled to stand, running out the door of the janitor's closet and leaving the broken animatronic for just a moment. Finally reaching the landline in the rental's desk, you searched for the paper with the mechanic's number scribbled on it. When you found it, you entered the numeral sequence on the buttons and lifted the plastic handset to your ear. Pick up, pick up, pick up, you mouthed, twirling the cord around your index finger nervously. With a click, the call connected, and a man's voice answered on the other side. He assured you everything would be all right once you explained the situation, and that he would be there shortly. You breathed a sigh of relief as you put the handset back in its stand. Moon would be okay. You hadn't broken him beyond saving, based on what the mechanic had said. Still, if he didn't hate you before, he definitely would now. You hung your head in shame and didn't dare go back to the scene. Big, wobbly tears welled up in your eyes. You'd really messed up. Alone in the janitor's closet, Moon sat up straighter as his internal systems restarted. In the background, he could hear the tap still run and you speaking in the other room. From the Walkman headset laying next to him on the ground, Touch in the Night by Silent Circle was playing at a low volume. Audio input seemed to be working fine. The visual input was worse. A scrambled mess of colors intermingling with the accurate information from his intact eye. Running diagnostics, he was relieved to find the cable connecting his left optic was just partially dislodged, causing the graphical glitches. Other than that, he had an indentation atop his head that could easily be fixed by a mechanic. But what worried him more was the feeling your hands had left on his faceplate. Carefully, he raised his own hands to trace the ghost of your touch. It's soft, warm, caring. For him? It made him feel like a shaken Polaroid picture. The chemicals and dyes weren't supposed to mix this way. And Moon knew, right then and there, that he had failed to keep his distance. End of Chapter 5.